with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Bud?
All right, I'll read you last year's minutes. It was August 7th, huh?
Randall.
Oh, okay. First, before I start this, we gotta have a little talk about the fellow that started all this was Randall Smith. And we all know that knew him, passed away in April, I think it was.
Who's Randall Smith?
And his boy is going to continue with Spirit and Hotel. And everybody around here in this town is probably going to really miss him because he did a lot of stuff for this town. You hear me? Okay. Can you?
Does.
There we go.
But everybody knows Randall, probably here. And today we got to kind of honor him because he has started quite a lot of stuff in the town of Brownville. And we hope he carries it on because Randall was I wouldn't say he was a true river rat. He never did work on the river. But you can see what he's done. He's put in a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of stuff, a lot of money. He's done quite a lot of work for the whole city of Brownville. So at this time, I would say that we ought to thank Randall and his family for all they've done for us. They have really done a lot of good deeds for the River Rat Association. For our rides and meals and everything else. So I'd like to give them a good hand for that. Then I'm going to let Jerry give a little speech here about another fellow that's put in a lot of time here. Jerry?
Thanks. I want to mention, do I have to, can you hear me?
We can hear you without it.
Yeah, but upstairs can't, so you need to use it.
Oh,
Get right up on it.
Okay. Merlin Wright. Merlin Wright, he's not a river rat. He never worked on the river at all. But he spent his time, he was a school teacher and he worked at Cooper Station. And he told me one time, I asked him about it, about he come and spend a lot of time on the dredge. And he said, I drove by this thing for 30 years and I'm just curious about it. So one day he come on it and he worked there, spent a lot of time. He liked to just get into the history of it. He'd give tours and do a lot of fix-it things. He was down there about every day. So we're going to miss Merlin a lot on the dredge. So both these fine gentlemen are going to be missed, that's for sure.
Yes.
Bud, you ready for your treasure minutes?
I'll give them minutes. Okay, last year's meeting was August 7th. We started at 10:37. And Jerry was present, I was present, Bob Cox was not, Kim Keeler was here, the secretary. We talked about when the Hall of Fame started, which was 1983. And with the nominations was put up for vote for Floyd Humphrey and Inez Robert. Both, I think, from Table Rock. They both from Table Rock.
not Floyd.
They were from Brownville.
Oh, they was from Brownville, that's right. And they was nominated by, see if I get this right,
Charlotte Sarah.
Charlotte Sarah.
You got it right.
And with no other nominations, that was closed. So they was our next, last year's nominations. We had the treasury report, which totaled, I think I bought $180 worth of hats, $56 worth of rolls. We ended up, at that time, we had $2,400 and $16 in the bank. Then at that time, I brought up, everybody knows about this, the prices of everything. We had to raise the prices, our hats and shirts, but I didn't want to. Last year, we sold the hats and shirts for the regular cost, but I was giving more the shirts and hats, but I was gonna let them go. But we had to go the other way this year. So what you pay for that stuff, for a souvenir, is just exactly what I had to pay for them for the River Rat Association.
Wow.
Because this is not a money-making organization. As long as we keep our head above the water, we're in good shape. So that worked out. And then at that time, we had some pictures showed and talked about the first pilot, lady pilot on the Missouri River, which was
Ines.
Ines Roberts. And it ran right here in Brownville, and it was called the Spirit of Brownville.
Isn't that my grandma?
So that was, that was brought up. We talked about that. And we opened up for nominations for the Hall of Fame. Charlotte nominated two of her, two brothers, not her brothers, brothers. One was a Raymond
Macbeth.
Macbeth, and the other one was Orrin Macbeth. And they worked on the Spirit of Brownville. So then Jerry Patterson, he nominated Kim Keeler. And Jamie Smith seconded, is all approved. And also, at this time, I talked about, our dues and stuff. And the last 2 or 3 years, I'm going to say one thing, we've had some good donations from a lot of people. We've had some good checks sent to us for donations, but the guys have never even come. But they're sending the money, donating for the River Rat cause. And then before the end of the meeting here, Charlotte got up and presented a beautiful picture to Randall Smith. Picture of the old Spirit of Brownville. I don't know where he hung it, but I had to ask Jamie, but he said he was going to hang it up where everybody can see it. I haven't been over on the motel or anything like that. So no more business in that meeting. We closed about 10:57. I want to say one thing. I appreciate all the people that come today and here last year. I hope you have a good time, but we still got a little ways to go here. So, at this time, you want to start with the nominations for this year that's going to receive their plaques and stuff. And I'm going to start. We've had a little change. The secretary, Kim, switched it and asked Jerry if it'd be all right to nominate her mother. So she said, Mom lived with a river rat for 60 years. So we switched around a little bit. So I told Kim she had to write up about her mom. So at this time, I'm going to let Kim read it, and I'm going to have somebody get her certificate.
Okay. Although I was honored to be nominated last year, I was like, there's no way I deserve that in any way. but my mom did. As he said, she put up with a lot of stuff for 60 years. So, with that being said, bear with me. All right, Beverly Ann Sherman Keeler. Beverly was born July 30th, 1939, and was raised in Prue, Nebraska. Her father, Harold F. Sherman, worked some on the river as a deckhand, so Beverly was not a stranger to the river life. When Beverly was in the 8th grade, she laid her eyes on a 9th grader, William H. Keeler, and it was then Beverly told everyone he was the one she was going to marry, which they did February 2nd, 1958. She married the man of her dreams. They started their family a year later, and William Bud worked on the river as a deckhand until later in 1969 became a pilot captain, and Beverly became a river rat stay-at-home wife taking care of their children. She ran the household while Bud supported the family. Beverly loved coming to the river rat reunions and always supported the love of her life. They were married 59 years, only short of 3 months from being 60 years when Beverly passed away on November 11th, 2017. She was a dedicated, loving wife. And mother throughout those 59 years. And she never complained about being a single parent while her loving husband provided for her and her 4 children. Some said when her husband Bud would retire, they soon would divorce. Well, the joke was on them because their love is like the river. They got to learn how to take the twists and turns and learn how to dance and take the chances with the current, and that they did. A love that never ended. Very much. That's my mom.
Okay, I got the certificate here. Bill or Shelley want to come and get it? Why not it?
It's,
Good.
Okay. With that, I want Charlotte to come up here, and she wants to read off about Raymond and Orrin here.
I nominated Raymond and Orrin Macbeth for the River Rat Hall of Fame. They were 2 men who came from Rosalie, Nebraska, to come down here to help their sister and her husband run the original Spirit of Brownville, which was a ferry across the river in the very early 1930s and until the bridge was built. Raymond was a deckhand on the Spirit of Brownville. He loved the water so much that he enlisted in the Navy, and he was at Pearl Harbor on that fateful day in 1941 aboard the USS Maryland. And he witnessed the Oklahoma rolling over, Oklahoma being one of the ships with the greatest loss of life there. So the water was always in his blood. And he had this habit of tying ropes. Anytime you go visit him, he learned so many ropes on the river, and then he just like studied them, and he'd say, here's one that'll work for, here's how you do it. But the one I really want to talk about is my uncle, Orrin Macbeth. He went to the University of Nebraska for a couple of years, and then he applied for work on the river with the Corps of Engineers. When all this river work started, putting on the straightening the river, that was a Corps of Engineer program with the dikes, and they hired inspectors. And Uncle Orrin used to write down stories. He'd say, I'm not a writer and I don't care about it. But then he'd write little 1-page stories. So I just want to read a couple of them about his work. He always started saying, I remember my first day as an inspector for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the Missouri River Improvement Project. This is 1934, 35, 36. Sam, that's his brother-in-law that ran the Spirit of Brownville, heard that the engineers were calling for inspectors, and he knew one man who had applied. He figured if that man could be an inspector, most assuredly I could be. That was with the civil service exam, so he insisted that I apply. Didn't think I had a chance in the world, but I did have 2 years of engineering at the university, and the job paid $1,800 a year, $150 a month, and that was a fortune at that time. Strange as it may seem, I was accepted. My first day on the job, I was put on a rock barge at Brownville and told to see that the laborers didn't throw any rock into the river that weighed less than 25 pounds. And you'll see some pictures up here, what he's talking about. One of the things that they did was they wove willow saplings into mats, and then they would cover them with riprap, which was brought in by a barge. And as any of the guys here can tell you, we've got the river rats here that know something about that. It was not good work. He said the rocks were for sinking a revetment mattress, and that's what this is. I could explain that this mat was made with 1x4 lumber woven like we used to weave wicker baskets when we were kids, or with willows. The mat is anywhere from 30 to 50 feet wide and from 500 to 1,500 feet in length. It's built along the bank, and of course the lumber floats. They had to sink it with rock. It's built to keep the bank from washing away. I have seen the river cut away a bank faster than you could walk directly away from it. You would have to run to keep from going into the river. As I said, I was put there on this rock barge. The laborers threw the rocks off the barge onto the mat. It was my job to see that they left the small rock on the barge. The contractor was paid by the ton, but the little rock was not counted. So, how was a 25-pound rock? I certainly didn't know. I figured if I picked up a rock, I could tell better what the weight was according to the size. The chief inspector was standing on the bank a short distance from understanding him. Yeah. I never took such a dressing down in my life, either before or after. He told me to, quote, keep your filthy hands off those rocks. We've got paid for that. He spent more than 45 minutes bawling me out, but when he was finished, I had learned a very important lesson. Here's another one, the beginning. I well remember the Depression era, the low cost of food, the low wages, the homelessness everywhere. You probably won't believe half of what I saw, but I'll swear that every word I write is true. I know I was there. First of all, the food. You could buy a dozen eggs for 2 cents, a 100-pound sack of potatoes for $1. That's a penny a pound. The best steak was about a nickel. You could buy a full meal for $0.10, a steak dinner with all the trimmings for 15 cents. I know one family personally that lived on potatoes alone without seasoning for over 6 months. There was no welfare than to supply the necessities of life. And then he goes on to talk about how good his job was. I'm going to read you one more. And there's more up here if he's interested. He says, I remember I was working for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the early part of the Depressions. The contractors really had their say. The working men did not dare complain about anything because there were at least 6 men waiting to take their place. Therefore, you kept your mouth shut. I know one man who was fired because he made the remark at the end of his shift that he was tired. He was told to go home and rest up and maybe he could do better on his next job. I also knew a superintendent who made a practice of firing a man every Monday morning. Of course, that man was the farthest from the starting point, so he had to walk past all the other workers. Intimidation is the word. Let everyone know he was fired and they could all work harder to keep their jobs. I knew another superintendent who made the remark that if he could work his men just 3 minutes overtime every day, he'd make his company $1,000 a month. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. Shortly after that, I was spending some idle time looking through job specifications, which we're supposed to know. And I ran across an article that said, the inspector is responsible that regulation time be maintained on the job. To me, that meant regular work hours. I talked it over with the chief inspector, and we agreed to stop the overtime. That very day came the test. I was inspecting the afternoon shift to finish at 8 p.m. At 7:50, the foreman picked up another piling to drive. This would usually take at least 45 minutes, if not twice that. I told the foreman that anything he did after 8 p.m., he would have to pull and re-drive the next day. That made the foreman mad. He ranted and raved, but the time he was through complaining was after 8 p.m., so we had to quit anyway. The next day, we had a piling almost driven at 8 p.m., so I let him finish with 10 minutes overtime. But the next day, he started to pick up the piling at 7:45. I told him again that he would pull that piling the following day. He immediately blew the whistle for the superintendent, who came right with the chief. They listened patiently while I explained my views, and I showed them the specs. And we kept that crew right there for over 2 hours on overtime while we argued about what my authority was. In the end, we agreed to eliminate the overtime as much as reasonably possible. I made a few brownie points with the workers. And he's got quite a few other stories where he's concerned what it was really like working on the river in the 1930s with a job that was considered really good, but was not pleasant working conditions. So, and he liked taking photographs, which is where those pictures of the willow mats come from. And he also liked taking pictures of the boats. And it is remarkable how many boats were on the river. First of all, the inspectors had a launch that they just used to get around. And then there were lots of dredge boats. Here's the Sergeant Floyd.
Sergeant Floyd, that's in Sioux City.
Will you pass that around or not?
You pass around. Here's the Robert McGregor in 1938. And here's a super nice picture of the Robert McGregor at work. You can see the. And he also took pictures of the dikes. When we're up and down the river, if you haven't worked them, and I'm just the granddaughter of river rats, it looks like the river to me. But every dike has a number and characteristics. For example, here's dike 572.0 in 1936. It is in 28 feet of water when it was driven in 1935. So here's, I cut off the number, but here's the dike that's in Langdon that was built by Woods Brothers. It's 3,250 feet long, almost half a mile. Picture of driving shore pile at Mossman Dock. Here's the Steve Rogers. You know that one, the Steve Rogers?
I know it.
It's got a paddle wheel. Is it a dredge?
That was the original Steve Rogers. Now, but they built another one afterwards. Didn't they? I think they did. Yeah.
And here's the
Nashville had it.
Manawa. I'm not sure what it is.
It looks like a barge, towboat, pushing
A
barge.
towboat.
That's a good one. Built out of Omaha.
Okay. So anyway, we have a lot of pictures. One of these days, we will get them up at the Meriwether Lewis. Make a nice little exhibit because thank you to Orrin Macbeth. We know something about personally what it was like in the Depression, working on the river. I forgot to print out just a copy of Uncle Orrin, but his little brother Raymond, I just have a little photocopy of him. And we'll be getting original pictures up to Bud and their stories. Not as long as I've said today, but a short story. Yeah, it's hard to see, but here,
You
he
gotta
actually,
stand it up. You can't stand the thing.
it's a picture or taken in 1936, and he actually in his photo album put the picture off his Corps of Engineer ID for inspector in his photo album. Kind of cool. Did you want to pass it around? Probably not that. Yeah, you
Sit
just-
down.
Anyway, so thank you for listening to me, just kind of telling you some of these treasures that are out and about.
Okay. All right, thank you. This time, who wants to accept the,
Larry.
what, Raymond? You want to get Raymond's certificate?
Yep, Larry will accept it on behalf of Raymond's family.
Go ahead.
And I'll accept it on go ahead.
And here we got Orrin Macbeth, is that right?
Yep,
So you're gonna accept
and I'll
it?
accept it on behalf of his family.
All right.
And their families live out of state, so we'll get the pictures to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Charlotte, bring it to me.
Okay, what else next, dear?
I have something. You ready? You're finished? You finished with yours?
I got it forward. You go ahead.
John Lauber here. John Lauber's been doing some, getting something started on the Bridge Lewis. He can tell you give you a few words of what's happening up there. So, if we have anybody that wants to work, I'm sure that he will tell you. There you go.
My name is John Lauber, and I'm not really a river rat, but from 1980 until 1999, my wife, my son, and my daughter, and I served the meals on this boat. So that's my connection to the river. I spent a lot of time on it. And now I'm working on writing grants that will get federal funds to preserve and restore the Lewis. And like Jerry said, we need lots of volunteers for all kinds of jobs to help this happen. And Jerry's doing a great job of repairing the gearbox so actually pistons go up and down. And then I know Bud from, I met him several times in the past, I met him last year. And I also give tours now. There's a poster that has phone number, has 3 phone numbers, 3 guys, me being one, that the people can call and we'll give them tours. So I've given a number of tours on the Lewis last summer and this summer. Anyway, just to tell you that we're working with the United States Department of Agriculture. They have grants for museums in rural areas, so we're applying for them. And we're also applying to the USDA. That is what we're talking about. USDA is one of the federal agencies that has funding for museums in rural towns like this one. The other grant is called Community Development Block Grant. And Monday night we'll be meeting with the Brownville Town Board to see if they will cooperate with us to continue with the application. So that's all I wanted to tell you about. The other thing that's very important is that for about 4 years now, a guy's been living here in Brownville. He's a mooring master. He lives here for 28 days. Then he's on the west coast at a place called El Segundo. It's outside of Los Angeles. He's a pilot, so when the oil tankers come in, he gets on and takes it further in to the offloading place. And so he's been on the seas his entire life. His career has been as a seaman. But he finally ended up where he doesn't have to go to the sea for months. But he's got this job, like I said, every 28 days he's here and back out there. And he's here now, and I tried to get him to come here, but he wouldn't do it. Anyway, he's really interested in the Mary Lewis, and that's how I got interested in this particular thing we're doing now. Because he volunteered to be president of the Meriwether Lewis Foundation. And he'll be around this afternoon after Lewis. You may want to go over and introduce yourself. And so that's what it's all about. Just trying to get support to preserve the Lewis and restore it. And one of the first things we like to do is put a passenger lift on it so people don't have to climb the steps anymore. In fact, we couldn't get any money unless we make it ADA accessible. And then we want to paint the exterior and do some work around the second deck where that ribbon, I call it a soft layer of the house. If you look at that, you see it's very much deteriorated. Trying to do things on it. So help us out if you can. Help Jerry and Bud.
Yeah.
They're the two youngest guys on here.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, nice talking to you.
Thanks, Don. Another thing is, do you have any progress? We need our water lines. Any progress on getting our water lines up? That's been a battle.
If you could all come to the Monday, this coming Monday, to the Brownville Village Board meeting, we can get some water.
Well, that'll be good. Because everybody knows it's hard to clean up something without water.
Oh.
Do you have any more business, Bud?
Yeah, I got the financial report here.
Okay, go ahead. Then I'll talk about something else.
All right, last year we did real good for donations and meals and stuff. Of course, Jamie and Randall always gives us a good break from life. Don't
Not
want to
this
forget
year.
that. And Jamie's wife, yes, I like that. But so far this year, this is all the money that's been spent. I spent $56 for flowers, $240 for shirts, $164 for hats, $56 for donuts. And at this time, we got $3,409, so many cents in the checking account. So we're doing good, on money. So that's the reason I went ahead and ordered a whole bunch of shirts. And,
$900 from last year to this year.
well, we come ahead, we'll have to pay Mrs. Jamie, we'll have to pay her.
Not this year.
Yeah, not this year.
Last year, yeah. Well, last year it was $700, but it's out. That's about all the check that I wrote. But I did put $930 in the checking account the other day on top. So by the time we get all the meals and ride and all that done, we'll still be good. But, like I said at the start, this is not a non-profit organization. That's the reason I'd rather see everybody have a get-together. If you want a souvenir, you got a souvenir, but it's a good day to get together and visit with everybody. Especially when a bunch of these people come up from Table Rock, Monty City.
Table Rock, not
Table-
Bonnie,
Table
not
Rock.
Bonnie,
Not
Bonnie.
not Bonnie.
Just table
Oh
rock.
my God.
Well, there might be
The
something.
Martin McCoys.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's about all I got on the report. Everything looks good. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Jerry. Ain't gonna be too long. It smells like we're gonna eat.
That smells good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bud. We'd have trouble operating without Jim and Bud. This would be a good time to have some discussions or introductions. I know Bud has family members here, and anybody else would like to stand up and introduce yourself. Discuss some new business. I think introductions would be fine.
Quentin, Hope, Bill, Connor, Dick, Richard, you've been here before, stand up. This is some of my kids.
Yeah.
Over here we got granddaughters, grandsons, grandkids, great-great-grandkids. They're from Wyoming, Colorado. And Bruce, you come in from Littleton, didn't you?
Yeah, Loveland?
You up to Lebanon now?
Yeah,
Shelley lives in Johnstown.
Jenny does.
Or Jenny, rather. course, Kim's sidekick, Rose,
Yeah.
he keeps her in line. I
If
don't
you
know
guys
if-
would all get mad at us, wouldn't have much of a meeting, would we? Anybody introduce any new business or discussions on anything? Anybody hungry?
Has anybody got any suggestions for any different ways to run this place or not?
Yeah, that'd be good. We're kind of changing from all of us being river rats to a lot of descendants.
Yeah.
And if anybody has any ideas or wants my job or anything to,
For my job.
or his job, but we have a lot of fun doing this. So, ready discussions about anything?
I like your QR codes for your cruise. I think that's a great idea. Gets it out there. The QR code.
That's for the cruise.
Enjoy
not
your
the
cruise.
rats.
Right
On
out the
the
window.
door.
Right on the
Mary.
window.
Right
That
at the
little
Oh,
thing.
okay, yeah, look at that. We're getting updated too. Well, if there's nothing else going, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Oh, what about nominations for next year?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do that.
It does do that.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, I'm gonna go ahead and ask for some nominations for the year 2003. 23.
So,
It'll be the 39th meeting we've had.
I've got a question, Bud.
Yes,
Is a river rat somebody who's literally worked on the river and picking up rocks or piloting? Wouldn't Randall be a river rat?
He's already
Randall
inducted.
Smith?
Randall?
Is he
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been inducted.
already- Okay,
I don't
him
know.
and Jane are both inducted up on the wall.
okay.
If you go up there, there's a lot of them up there. But you're right, Jerry's right. We've kind of got out of the river rats, actually worked out here, but now we're getting into the city. Which is, to keep us carrying on, we're doing better with, not better, but keep on going.
Got somebody to tell your stories to.
Yeah, yeah, it's like your older people, when they pass away, they take all the stories with them and you don't remember, do you? You should have wrote it down, that's what I say.
That's what we are exaggerating for.
Huh?
We exaggerate so it's better.
Yeah, I guess.
Don't let the
History's
truth
written
get
by
away.
the winners.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and open the nominations for Hall of Fame for the year 2023. Does anybody got it?
I've got one.
Okay.
On behalf of Kim Zerke, I'd like to nominate Gary Gardner for father.
Yes.
Gary Gardner.
Very good.
Used to be a pilot on the Missouri River, worked with him, knew him. I don't know how we got acquainted, Hope.
Is John still here?
Who?
John Lauber?
I think he just went upstairs.
Okay.
He's upstairs. So you went upstairs?
Okay, we got Gary Gardner.
Yep.
All right, got any more?
I'd like to nominate Sam Roberts and Fritz Leesburg of the Roberts and Leesburg Ferry Company, original owners of the original Spirit of Brownville.
Who was it now?
Sam Roberts and Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z, Leesburg, L-E-S-E-B-E-R-G.
Okay.
Okay, that makes three. Got any more?
I have none.
Anybody else? Okay, if nobody else has got any more, somebody make a motion to close it.
A second.
Okay. That'll make a total of 3 for next year.
Hey, Suzanne. Sits Manila's.
Be sure and get me a write-up if you can before, and I'll have it all ready.
Okay, I will.
That way, put it right up.
Yep.
Okay, everything is square. With this, I'm gonna turn it back over to Jerry, and I guess we'll probably see if Jimmy can get the engine started, and we won't have to row.
Paddle. Hands.
As long as we stay back here, we're in good shape.
Oh,
I just want to thank everybody for coming, and,
Yes.
yeah, if we didn't have people, we wouldn't have a group. 1 or 2 people not it. It looks like we're just keeping up the way it's going to go.
Hey, Jerry,
Yeah,
you just have the actual river rats introduce themselves and what
Yes.
they do.
I would think right here's one. You want to introduce yourself?
yes.
I think I can hear me.
I'm scared of it too. I don't like.
I worked on rock barges, I worked deckhand, I worked 2 pile drivers. I have hand placed some rocks underneath where they had barges, you know, where they couldn't shovel them in. So I know what it's like to carry them big old rocks. And I was back in the early 60s, and the first pile driver I worked on was Missouri River Constructors, Mark and Brown and them. And then I got drafted in the Army, went to God's country for a while, came back and got on with Pine Bluff Sand and Gravel, and I was a deckhand mostly on that, but I rafted piling, road piling up. I just about did it all. So, that's for me.
I know we have another river rat right here. You worked on the river, didn't you? Tell them who you are.
I'm Paul Davidson. I work for Massman,
Massman.
Bushman, Clark, and Holiday Sand, and all of them up and down there. And I was pretty much a crane operator, but I got to be a lot of deckhands when Pete Roselle was moving us around. I learned how to use ratchets and jockey wires a lot. And I was their only crane operator that moved with their dredges and stuff like that. So I had to set them up and do it, you know, pull the spuds when we got ready to go and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, and Pete let me run the boat a lot when we was coming up river. He let me ride and guide there a little bit. Had some fun. But it was a good 38 years. I had a lot of fun.
Still go out there and look at the river once in a while, don't you?
Oh, I go down and catch a ride every once in a while on that fair.
Yeah. Anybody else? We know Bud has his history.
Yeah.
Me, I'm one of them. I worked 2 seasons on the Fairway Lewis. So I give tours and things like that, and I also worked several places with this gentleman, probably at the same time, but we don't remember each other. Imagine that. Another thing, getting back, I just have to think about something here. My dad built, worked on those mats, and you talk about lifting those rocks. He said they had a saying out there. He said, if you can't do it, you can't stay. And right behind him at that time, there was other people who were trying to do it. So that's all I have. Anybody else, anything? Enjoy your meal.
Thank you.